Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org. Consequence, the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here and checking out the series. Please do hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. I am honored and very excited today to have one of mine on here, Midge Ure. Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you?
It's great over here. It's so good to catch you on tour right now. With Howard Jones out there. How's the tour been going?
It's been going incredibly well. We've done 5 shows now, I think, and each show gets better. I think my initial trepidation about doing this tour, because I've known Howard for a long time, and he asked me specifically about a year ago if I could do the tour with him, and my big worry was the formats that I'm doing the tour in. So there are only 2 of us on stage. we make a lot of noise, but there are only 2 of us. So I'm playing guitar and keys. And Howard has loaned me his young keyboard player, and between the 2 of us, we make a fair old noise. But it's great fun, I have to say. It's been a real experience doing it. So yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying the whole thing.
Yeah, has it forced you to do like the reevaluation on how the songs are played live? Have you had to rework any of them?
Not really. I think because of the nature of the tour. As Howard said, he wanted it quality. He wanted it electronic. So it was leaning more towards the electronic side of things. So I've kept the set list, making it as difficult for Howard as possible, of course. I've kept the set list kind of Ultravox, Visage, and solo heavy. So there's quite a few Ultravox tracks in there that I know a lot of people out here would never have heard live. Ultravox toured America 3 or 4 times. But that was way back in the late 70s, early 80s. So for people to hear, classic Ultravox tunes performed live, I've kept them as fairly authentic as possible. As I said, I want to keep Howard up to scratch. So when he's coming on, he's got a bar, he's got a level to hit, which of course he does every day. He's really good at what he does. He's fantastic. So it's not much of a challenge for him.
Yeah, I had him on recently too to talk. He's got some great new music, and of course, what we did, taking the opportunity. I think the first time that you all toured together was back in '89, and just kind of remembering that time and that tour. And I'll just throw the same thing out to you, like. Does anything come to mind when you think back to the first time that you all did that round?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's the first time I had ever gone out and done the sheds, as we lovingly called them, kind of outdoor arenas. And Howard was playing some huge places then, because he had the great good fortune of being commercially successful here in the States. And Ultravox were and are forever, an alternative underground band. We never hit the same heady heights. So the idea of going out on tour with Howard then was fabulous. I mean, the full-blown band. But I also had my own bus. So we never spent nearly as much time together as we're doing right now. We're sharing a bus right now. We're sharing a crew. Howard's out. He's got Jan, his wife, is here with him. They're always together. I've known the 2 of them for a long time. So this is kind of like a vacation. This isn't what I call work, but it's great fun. It's really good. So yeah, harking back to those days, it was fabulous. I got to play the type of venues that Ultravox should have and possibly could have made it to, but because of technological restrictions back in the early 80s, we had to do 5-hour sound checks. We had to sound check for nearly 3 times longer than we would play in order for the equipment to make sure that everything was working, because everything was live, nothing was pre-recorded. So the logical step for Ultravox back then was, after you play the larger theatres, you would open up for someone else. because you can't do that. You can't do that doing a 5-hour sound check. So back then, 89, that was as close as I got to moving up the live ladder in America.
Yeah, which is interesting too, because you had sort of a minor hit in the country with Dear God at that time. I mean, that it must have at least felt like some sort of momentum at that time with what was coming off of that record.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the radio response to Dear God was fantastic, especially after the record label head of the record label flew down to the Caribbean where I was finishing the track and listened to it and said, "It's a great track, but it'll never get played in American radio." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, it's got God in the title." I said, "But God Only Knows," and the Beach Boys did pretty well with that. So I was surprised because it wasn't what I would have thought of as, you know, a classic alternative track. It was a good song and it was a well-made record. But for whatever reason, it resonated a lot here in America. So yes, it was my dabbling with a hit in America. It was the closest I could get, and it coincided really well with the tour. So the recognition factor was really good. It was fabulous to do.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, because XTC with Dear God, that was a bit of a hit here in America, and of course Kate Bush was coming off of her now world-conquering song with Running Up That Hill, you know, Deal With God. I don't think it should have been that. So whoever your record person was just wrong, I think, is what I'm getting at.
I think he's probably no longer a record person.
Oh man,
still around.
Yeah. Yeah, I brought Kate Bush, of course. I should bring up, you had done that duet with her as well, with Sister and Brother. Do you keep, like, have you been keeping up with all of her success right now? Do you guys even communicate these days?
I haven't spoken to Kate for a long time. She's very much a recluse. She keeps herself to herself. She really doesn't play the kind of music star game. You know, I don't think she's on social media. She's very much an insular person, a lovely person, fabulous. But she's chose not to go down that route. You don't see her on TV very often. You don't hear her doing interviews very often. Although she has done interviews recently talking about this strange turn of events for her. A long overdue turn of events, I have to say. You know, Kate Bush has been a genius all her life. You know, she has created and manufactured music that none of us could dream of doing, and it's an absolute, you know, pleasure to be a friend of hers and to have done that duet with her, which is wonderful. So to see an audience, a completely different audience, tag on to something that she did 35, 40 years ago is just spectacular, because all the stuff that's deemed so important in the music industry, you know, the way you look, the age you are, the type of trainers you wear, are you wearing the right shirts, have you got the right designer behind you, you know, can you dance, you know, all of that becomes irrelevant, because all people heard was a great piece of music in a fantastic vehicle and a great television show, and it worked incredibly well. So well done, Kate. It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, it's been nice seeing people that weren't aware of Kate finding some of those older songs, and hopefully that also means this one right here, because Sister and Brother, that's one of those ones that should be heard, you know, by tons of people as well. I mean, that's a great one you all did together.
Well, I'm very proud of it. I mean, to have Kate Bush agree to perform, you know, on one of your songs is kind of like the ultimate pat on the back. It's the ultimate accolade. You know, when I went to the studio, because I wasn't fortunate enough to be there when she did it. She did it in her own time in her own studio with my multi-tracks, and she called up to say, well, I've done, would you like to come and hear what I've done? I went to her studio and they played this thing, and I expected to hear just Kate's voice, not this multi-tracked Kate choir like she did. So she'd obviously spent a huge amount of time doing this. Hold on. Oh, we've got Howard Jones here. Look, hold on a second. Look.
Howard.
You guys a couple of weeks ago. Quite brilliant.
Yeah, Howard, it's Kyle Meredith. Good to see you.
Great, Kyle. Great to speak to you again. Something.
Only if you have to. Sorry, I'm commandeering the back lounge in the bus here, so everyone's got their clothes and things. So there might be slight disturbances, but that's not a bad disturbance to have, is it?
Not a bad one at all, right there. Happy to see everybody around all at once. Yeah,
it's one big.
Yeah. Well, I'll only say this poignantly and without projecting onto you and everything, but it's been an emotional day, especially here in America, and that Answers to Nothing on that record. I went back and listened to that one this morning, and that's one of those songs that there's a lot of your songs that do that, but it's still, you have these songs that just continue to speak to moments, which I know for a lot of artists, that's got to be great to know that your songs continue to have legs, and should be probably frustrating for some of them at the same time. Do you have that relationship with your music?
Yeah, of course. I mean, any writer wants to write about what affects them, what you see and read and feel and experience. And all those songs over the years, and maybe not initially. I mean, I think you, as a writer, you grow. It's just sad that some of the subject matter I'm writing about now is the same subject matter I wrote about 40 years ago. As you say, Answers to Nothing, Dancing with Tears in My Eyes. As a species, we don't seem to grow up very well. We get older, but we don't seem to learn an awful lot, and just even seeing news is on, today, what's happened today, and you think, oh, please, it's just crazy. We seem to be running around far more interested in beating other people up because of their religion or their colour or their language or things we don't understand and choose not to understand. So it's kind of sad. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's great to see that the songs are still relevant, but it's sad to see the songs are still relevant.
Right. That's exactly it. Well, that record, I don't know why I'm really putting a lot of concentration on that one, other than I know it ties in with the last time that you and Howard toured, but it's been a powerful record for me lately. So I'm just kind of throwing out the, thank you for making the arts that you have made.
Thank you for still listening to it. That's great.
Yeah. And it's sort of with that in mind. I mean, it's 40th anniversary of Ultravox's quartet with the Anvil records also, which was the funny thing about you. You get certain years there and you've got so many anniversaries from so many different bands. That's Man Who Sold the World. I've got Bowie over my shoulder right here. That came out in '82. Do you take the moments like this tour? Are you putting any concentration on any of that stuff specifically because of the anniversaries?
Not necessarily because of the anniversaries. I think you're more aware of the anniversaries than I am. I think it's funny, you see the odd tweet or the odd message by people who focus on that stuff, and you think, oh wow, was it that amount of time ago? I am dreadful with time scales. Everything to me happened 3 years ago, 5 years ago. It's I try not to live in the past. But saying that, the set that I'm doing on this tour is very much rooted in the past, and I've dug out Man Who Sold the World, and I'm doing first ever live interpretation of it in this set. But I just thought it was kind of relevant, especially
it's great as well.
Thank you. See, we got the seal of approval here from the master. So yeah, it's good because the tour dictates that's maybe what you should be playing, rather than and as I told Howard, I'm going to try and make it as difficult for him to follow as possible.
Yes.
So I'm putting in as many well-known tunes as America would know. So yeah, it's good. Not necessarily because of the anniversaries, but because I think the tracks are maybe more relevant to this particular tour. We all want to make this tour the best tour that we could possibly make it. So
yeah, the two of you all being human jukeboxes as you are, it is a hell of a bill.
Well, we're not just the jukeboxes. We built the jukeboxes. We manufactured and designed.
So that's the past. What about the new stuff? How's that being represented? I mean, what recently was it? Last year you did Das Beat with Band Electronica. And I know you've got
did.
some stuff in the work, but are you bringing that stuff out? And actually, I would love to hear about that track as well, if you don't mind.
Well, I was weirdly it was Wolfgang Fleur, who was one of the original percussionists in Kraftwerk, came to see Band Electronica touring on the 1980 tour. We performed the entire Vienna album and selections of the first Visage album, which again I'd never performed live. And he came to see it in Dusseldorf, where they're based. And of course, it's like I don't know. It's like a demigod coming to see you. You know, if you're into electronic music, he's one of the guys who started all this. He took me aside and said, "Look, I'm making an album and I'm doing stuff with like Peter Hook from, the New Order and stuff like that." So he said, "Would you write something? Could we work on something together? You know, maybe you could write something." And I said, "Yeah, it'd be an honor. It'd be great." You know. So a couple of days later, with this running around my head, I thought, well, as a kind of pastiche to the movie and television show Das Boot about the German, submarine, I thought, well, he's the beat master. The Das Beat is a great thing to call it. And I tried explaining it to him, and he said, "Well, I don't understand." I said, "Well, of course you don't understand, because you are the one that we all revere, and you are the guy who played all those fantastic rhythms on the Kraftwerk stuff that we cut our teeth on, that we learned everything we know from. So this beat, the idea that it's the beat, it's the rhythm, irrespective of what language or country or what religion you are, we all dance, we all move to a certain beat, different beats." So I kind of sold him on the idea of doing that. And within a day or two, I'd kind of written the song and done the track. When I got home, I'd just knocked up the track quite quickly and sent it to him. And then he said, "Well, I've got these ideas lyrically and musically," and we ended up putting out two different versions of the same song. His version on his album and my version, which is great. It's just great that a piece of music can be as malleable as that and take on different forms.
It's fun to listen to. Agreeing with everything you said, it's also just very fun to listen to.
It's fun to listen to. It's pure electronic pop, and it's not something I do very often. But I suppose I was like a school kid, indulging myself, just doing a very Kraftwerk-esque stroke. I don't know if you guys ever heard the song Pop Music by the Band M.
1979.
It's got very much that kind of pop thing. Once you've heard the chorus a couple of times, as the Germans call it, it's an earworm. You can't get it out your head. So yeah, it was fun to do, I have to say. It's very, very different from the stuff that I'm doing for myself, but it was great to delve into that world for a while, pretend I was in Kraftwerk.
Well, I'd love to hear about that other stuff too, because I guess you've got multiple things in the work right now. Another orchestrated record. A solo album? Is that what you're talking about as well?
There's a solo album that's been on the go for the last 3 or 4 years. Very slow, and we started dabbling with a follow-up to the orchestrated album, which takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money to do it. It's a labor of love, I think that. But in the meantime, during lockdown, I again indulged myself. I've always made instrumental music. Just about every album I've put out has had an instrumental track on it. So I jumped in with both feet, and I've written an entire instrumental album, which I'm extremely proud of. Nobody's heard it yet, so maybe they won't be as proud of it as I am. But I thoroughly enjoyed the process. It's kind of like wearing a different hat in the studio. It's not like writing songs. It's more like writing film soundtrack music, which I've done in the past as well. So I've done that, and that's now complete. So I finished that one. The last one to start is the first one that I finished. Go figure. It's crazy.
Do you mind if I ask, like, musically, what's the direction that you kind of going on with it, with this stuff right here? Like, what's it going to sound like to us?
It's going to sound like me, and that's all I can sound like. I mean, I try and avoid the trap of jumping on whatever the current bandwagon is. So I've never done the dance remix thing. I've done 12-inch mixes. We used to do that a lot back in the 80s. But I've never jumped on I'm going to get this cool DJ to remix my album, because in my mind they just don't work. The artist knows what the thing should sound like more than anybody else on the planet. If you're depending on having building a team around you to make your ideas work, ideas get watered down. They get filtered by the more people you use, the less of your original idea there is. And sometimes that can be a good thing. Sometimes for me, it doesn't really work. I'm quite happy following my own little path. So I won't be able to describe what it'll sound like. It won't be a million miles away from the Fragile album, but it'll be a few steps on from this Fragile album. So I can't really tell you.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy that you've been following your own path this whole time. I could say that. Yeah, such a fan of what you do, and honestly, with being a fan of you, we feel spoiled a lot with just as much as you produced out there. So keep it coming, man. Keep it coming.
Well, I intend to, as long as good health comes my way. As long as I wake up in the morning, I'll be carrying on making music.
Well, Midge, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it, especially while you're in the middle of the tour and everything. So I hope you and Howard are having the best time out there. I really hope to catch one of these shows myself. So thanks so much for taking the time to talk today.
Kyle, it's been an absolute pleasure.